The Season 1 update of Modern Warfare 3 is here, and there were many buffs and nerfs to a lot of the weapons, changing up the meta. They even added a flamethrower. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this weapon isn't going to be a part of the top 5 best setups, but it is the Ram 7. This is a brand new AR that they just added, and honestly, it is pretty good. Just overall, there is a lot of recoil, so if you do use this build, just keep in mind it's going to be a little bit hard to use at long range, but at medium range, I do feel like it's going to be one of the best guns. So because there's so much recoil on this Ram 7, we are going to go ahead and add the bulleted brake, which is going to bring down the horizontal recoil control, but we get a lot of vertical recoil control, basically eliminating all the vertical recoil. And the horizontal, there is a lot, but it's very manageable. Plus, we are going to be using a different attachment to mitigate that con. And then yes, we are going to be losing a little bit of our damage range with the bulleted brake, and so that's why I'm going to be adding the heavy barrel, which is going to add a lot of recoil control, making the weapon a little bit easier to use and mitigating the cons that the muzzle is giving to our horizontal recoil. Plus, we do get a lot of damage range, and so if we take a look at the headshot damage, this is going to do about 46 damage per shot, so you cannot get a 3-shot kill since the enemies in this game do have 150 health, so you do have to hit at least 4 shots to the head if you want to get a 4-shot kill. But now you are going to be able to get that faster time to kill, up to 35.3 meters, and then around 57 meters it's not going to take any more shots to kill. And then yes, we are losing a lot of our mobility. The mobility and the accuracy and a little bit of the handling is getting completely chocked, which is why I went ahead and added the Phantom 5 hand stop. This one's going to add a lot of recoil control. Yes, we do lose a little bit more of our horizontal, but it's only 1.4%, so you shouldn't really notice it. And as you guys can see, I guess the mobility didn't really get compensated right there, mostly just that sprint to fire speed. But you know, this gun, you guys could see, it already has a decent amount of mobility, and so you don't really need too much on the gun, if that makes sense. And then since we are going to be blowing through ammo, I'm going to be adding the 40 round mag. This is the attachment that I would swap out for something else, like maybe you don't like the iron sights on here, so then you would want to add like the slate reflector. Maybe you want to add the MK3 reflector, which if you haven't tried out the Nitro, you should definitely try out this optic. It is a very nasty sight. And so again, if you do want to use like a Stockholm laser ammunition, one ammunition that would be pretty good is going to be the high grain rounds. This one's going to increase the damage range to about 40.6 meters, and so now you can kill the enemies a little bit quicker up to that range, and then also makes the bullet velocity up to almost 1,000 milliseconds, and so it does make the weapon feel a lot more responsive. But since the fire rate's so fast, I do prefer to run the 40 round mag. And then since there still is a decent amount of recoil on the weapon, we are going to be adding the retort, which is just going to add a little bit of that recoil control without really having any cons. Yes, we are losing aiming idle sway, but we get a lot of firing aiming stability, which is the most important stability. You want to make sure your gun does not sway at all as you're firing the gun, which this grip is going to eliminate that sway. This also could be the attachment that you could swap out for like an optic, Stockholm ammunition, or a laser. Just the 3 main ones are going to be the Phantom, the barrel, and the muzzle. And with all that said, if you guys do want to take a screenshot of the class, here you guys go. And then for the perks and equipment and things, I basically run the same thing on every single build I'm going to be giving you. I do kind of mix it up based off the build, but you guys will see what I mean. So for this one, I am going to be running the infantry vest just so I can play pretty aggressive. I can recharge that attack sprint a little bit quicker. And then the Renetti is going to be my secondary. This is definitely my favorite secondary in the game. It is so nasty. Sometimes I do add an optic or a suppressor, but overall this one right here is going to be my favorite build for it. And then I love the breacher drones. These things are so funny, and so I'm going to be adding that. And the tactical, for every build I'm going to give you, I always run the stim. The stun grenade and the other ones are kind of good. Smoke is good for search and destroy, but the stim just makes it so, you know, your health regens a lot quicker, since the health takes a long time to regen in this game. For the munitions box, I might switch this out for something else, since they did buff the overall reserve ammo, and so you don't run out of ammo nearly as much, but I still, you know, find myself running out of ammo sometimes, so that's why I'm going to be having the munitions. And then for the gloves, so when I'm playing aggressive, I do have the assault gloves. If I'm running like an AR that I'm sitting back playing a little bit slower, I will run the marksman gloves, so there's less sway, and when the enemies shoot at me, my screen doesn't shake as much. And then for the boots, I'm going to be running the covert sneakers. The only time I don't really run these is if I'm on like Rust, maybe Meat, that brand new map, or like Shipment, just because the enemies don't really hear footsteps. They just hear a bunch of gunfire and grenades going off since the map is so small. But overall, covert sneakers does work the best. These ones are very fun on Shipment. You can just run around and like slide ADS. It's super broken. And then lightweight is pretty nice. That's what I usually run on, like maybe Rust or Shipment, just so I can run around a little bit quicker. And then since I always die by nades, I'm going to be running the EOD. Say the enemies are throwing a lot of stuns and flashes, then I will run the tactical mask. And then if they're not really throwing anything at all, I'll just run the ghost, so I'm off the radar, when they do call in that UAV. We all know the master camos look amazing in Modern Warfare 3, but they take hundreds of hours to get. So if you want to save yourself some time, I would definitely check out Guapsi. Guapsi is a very reliable company who will play in your account and unlock anything you want with a very fast delivery time. They have been sponsoring me for a long time and I haven't seen a single negative review, and so I would really check them out. I'll have their link in the description. Okay, for the first gun, this is going to be the MCW, and they actually added a flamethrower to the game, and so you guys definitely got to try the flamethrower on the MCW. It does take a decent amount of time to kill the enemies, but it is so fun to use. Like, this game is already way better than Modern Warfare 2, and so if you don't want to run the Jack Purifier, then I would add the hand stop on here just to boost the overall mobility on the weapon. That's the underbarrel I was using before they added the flamethrower, but the flamethrower, so fun to use, so unique, and so I've been having a great time with that. For the barrel, just to increase the overall damage range, making this thing take less shots at range. So this thing does about 44 damage per shot, and so you can get that 4-shot kill up to 32.3 meters, and then it's not going to take any more shots to kill, around 54.8 meters. And then we are losing a lot of our mobility, which is why I was running that hand stop underbarrel, but overall all the guns in this game already have a lot of mobility, so it shouldn't really impact you that much. For the muzzle, I am going to be adding the Shadow Strike suppressor just so I am off the radar. This is going to make it so, you know, I don't show up on the radar when I fire my weapon. If I weren't to run that, then I'll probably run a bulleted break. This one's going to add a lot of vertical recoil. Yes, there is going to be a little bit more of horizontal, but there's going to be 0 vertical, which is that's a little bit more important since the horizontal, there really isn't that much to make a difference. And then for the next attachment, since I do run out of ammo with this build a lot since I'm playing so aggressive and it's so good to where you never really die, I am going to be adding the 40 round mag, which, you know, again, this is going to be the attachment, or you could swap out the underbarrel if you want to use like an optic, ammunition, laser, stock. Some people I know, they do take off this barrel and then they actually add the high grain rounds, so then you have no mobility cons and you're only losing a little bit of your recoil control. And this gun really doesn't have that much recoil, and so you can kind of get away with running the high grain rounds instead of the barrel. For me though, I'd rather run the barrel, and then to just add a little bit more recoil control, making this thing a little bit easier to use and make it so it doesn't sway when we are firing it, we are going to be adding the claw rear grip. It just adds about 10% for each value right there. And so if you guys do want to take a screenshot, my favorite MCW class setup, here you guys go. The optic I do recommend you guys to run. Oh, one optic you guys should try is going to be the Cronin Intelast MSP12. This one's like a cyborg sight, and it does add a laser, which is a little bit annoying, but it is a very, very fun sight to use. Overall though, I usually run the MK3 reflector or the Niter model 2023, and I would usually swap out the underbarrel or a magazine for that. For the rest of the class, it's pretty similar to the other class. I am going to be actually running the demolition vest though. This one is going to basically make it so you can replenish your lethals and your tacticals every 25 seconds, and you get 2 lethals. So if you are pretty aggressive and you don't really die that much, you can actually get away, like you can really pop off with this, since you can chuck off so many nades and you can heal up in so many gunfights. If I am dying a lot, I'll just run like the infantry vest instead, and then same exact Renetti class as before. For the field upgrade, munitions box, gloves, marksman gloves, since I know I just said since if you're playing aggressive this is good, but I do sit back and I play aggressive with this build since it is like an AR, so I do like the marksman gloves, so it's a little bit easier to stay on target at range. And then, you know, all the like this class already feels very good for rushing, so basically allows you to play whichever style you want. Same reasons go for the covert sneakers. And then since I am not going to be in the enemy's face with like an SMG, I'm going to be running ghost, since that usually helps me out a little bit more unless the enemies are spamming nades and stunts. This next build I want to go over, this is going to be the BAS-B, which is probably my favorite gun in the game. Kind of looks like the Honey Badger from COD Ghost. This build is going to have absolutely no recoil and a lot of ammo, and you are not going to be on the radar since we are going to be adding the Shadow Strike suppressor. This is definitely one of the best builds in the game, especially because we are going to be adding the Wolverine barrel, which is going to increase that damage range by a whopping 20%. So since this thing does 54 damage to the head, you can actually get a 3-shot kill up to 42.7 meters, making it one of the most broken guns in Modern Warfare 3. And then for the underbarrel, to mitigate some of the cons that we are getting, well, just in general, this gun already has a lot of recoil, so to mitigate some of that recoil, I am going to be adding the vertical grip. This one's going to increase that recoil gun kick by 6.9%. Yes, we are losing a little bit of our horizontal, which you guys are going to see. Well, you guys are going to see when you're using it. You're going to be beaming like crazy. And then we do get a little bit of mobility, which is the reason I really like the skeletal vertical grip. And then if you guys are curious what that recoil gun kick means, that's basically like the smoothness of your your recoil. It just overall makes it a little bit easier to use. Since this gun only comes with 20 rounds, I am going to be adding the 30 round mag. And then for the rear grip, I do got the ST88 grip to add a lot of recoil control. You guys can kind of see a trend with all the builds. You want to add a little bit of like recoil control mobility with underbarrel. Muzzle, if you can get away with running a suppressor, run a suppressor. If you can't, usually want to use the bulleted brake. And then for the barrel, this one obviously you want to increase that damage range. If you do need more ammo, obviously run the ammo. And then rear grip, I usually always run the ST88 grip just to add a lot of recoil control and make it so my gun doesn't sway in the middle of a fight. For this build, I am going to be running the infantry vest since you can play pretty aggressive and you can use this thing like an SMG since the time to kill is so quick. And then I am going to be running the Core 45. This is one of my favorite secondaries in the game. It's not as good as the Renetti, but it is a very fun one. You can basically use this in any way you want, but make sure your trigger action does have the heavy match since this one does increase the fire rate by a whopping 50%, which makes the gun kill twice as fast. I am going to be running the breacher drone on here. Got the stimulations box, marksman gloves, covert sneakers, and the ghost. Again, all personal preference for these things. You can use whichever thing you want. For the next gun, this is going to be the striker. They actually went ahead and buffed the striker. They didn't do a massive buff, but they did increase the overall mobility of it. So now you actually can fire your gun after sprinting a little bit quicker. Plus you can ADS a lot quicker. And so overall, this is going to be one of the meta SMGs in the game. It is so freaking nasty. And so since you aren't going to really be dying too much, you're going to be able to go on streaks. And if you're on a streak, you don't really want the enemies to know where you're at. So that's why we are going to be adding the shadow strike suppressor on here just to keep us off the radar. Again, if you do want to run a muzzle, that's going to give you more recoil control, which honestly, I don't think this gun really needs it. For this one, I would actually add the pure fire muzzle. Yes, we are actually, no, I would run the bulleted brake for sure. Gonna have a little bit of horizontal, but you're gonna have 0 vertical. And then for the barrel, to increase the damage range, making this thing take less shots at range, we're gonna be able to almost get a 3-shot kill up to 11.4 meters since this does increase that damage range by 18.3%. And then yes, we are gonna be losing a little bit of our mobility, but this thing just got a mobility buff, and so you're really not gonna notice that whatsoever, especially when we add the skeletal vertical grip. Yes, this is going to be bringing down the horizontal, but it's only 1%, and then we get 8% for the vertical and 6.6% for that recoil gun kick. Plus we are going to be mitigating all the cons that barrel was giving us. And so now you guys are going to notice this thing, you feel like if it was same bullets and the flash had a baby. It is nasty. And then for the stock, we are going to be adding the Lockman MK2 light stock. Sometimes I do run the nose stock, but I know a lot of people can't control that, and so I usually recommend you guys to run this one. So if you are very good and you're on a tiny map, you might want to add the nose stock. So this one though is going to basically do the same thing, but we're not going to have as many cons, but then you're not going to get as many pros basically. And then for the rear grip, we are going to be adding the Socken ZX grip. This one's just going to increase that recoil control and add a lot of fire and aiming stability, and so very similar to the other builds. If you do want to have like a magazine on here, I would probably take off the rear grip and add a magazine. You could take off the muzzle and add a magazine, or you could take off the stock. Really, this gun is good with no attachments. The only thing you really want to make sure you have is the barrel, so then it has just a little bit more range, and so you don't get outgunned as much. For the secondary, I am gonna here's the screenshot for you guys in case you guys want that. And then if you guys haven't already liked the video, you should like the video and hit the subscribe button if you want to stay updated with all the best class tips in Modern Warfare 3. For the secondary, I am running the Core 45, same exact class as before. It's just a copy and paste on everything. Same tactical, lethal, field upgrade. For the gloves on here, since I am playing very aggressive with the SMG, I am going to be running the assault gloves. For the boots, we got the covert sneakers, so they don't know where I'm at. Although, smaller maps, sometimes I'll run the lightweight boots. For the gear, since I am always going to be in the enemy's face with this build, I'm going to have the EOD padding. But again, if they're not throwing nades, you can get away with running ghost. For the next weapon we're going to be going over, this is the Wasp Swarm. And the Wasp Swarm actually got a mobility buff, which, I thought this thing already had a lot of mobility. And so if you were already flying around the map, you are going to be really flying around the map. Now, this build is so nasty. We got a lot of mobility and absolutely no recoil control. And so we are going to be, we have a lot of recoil control, which is why we are going to be adding the Shadow Strike suppressor. I found that I really don't need more recoil control on the weapon, but if you are a beginner player and you're having a really hard time controlling the recoil, you might want to add the bulleted brake. This one's going to add a lot of vertical. What you guys could also do is the L4 flash hider. I don't know where it's at with I think I found it right there. There's so many muzzles in this game. So the L4 flash hider is a very good muzzle, and it just lowers the ADS speed by a little bit, but the ADS speed is already very fast on this weapon, and so now we basically get a lot of recoil control without having like basically any cons. But for me, I would rather run the Shadow Strike suppressor. For the barrel, we are going to be adding the Wasp Reckless 90 long barrel. This one's going to increase that damage range by 32%. There's still not going to be that much damage range. It's only about 6 meters, but it's not going to be as bad. So we increased it by 32%, and it's still pretty bad. So this is a must on the gun. And then we do get a lot of recoil control as well. Yes, we are losing a little bit of our hand-aim mobility, but this thing just got a buff to those things, and so you will not notice that whatsoever. And then for the underbarrel, we are going to be adding the Chimera vertical grip instead of running the skeletal one. This one is just because it has a little bit more pros with less cons. The other one works good on like ARs and things, but for this build, I just found it was working really good. And so now the gun should be actually a lot easier to use, and then you're still going to be able to run around very quickly, which is why I'm going to be adding the 50 round mag, so then I don't really have to worry about reloading as often. If you don't want to run that, you could honestly take off that and then add like an optic rear grip ammunition or a laser. One thing you could do is add the high grain rounds. This one's going to increase the damage range even more, but I found that the 50 is kind of needed since, you know, I think the base, yeah, it's only 32 rounds, so you really fly through ammo. 100 round is very nice on like shipping or like meat, and that map is so crazy. I feel so weird saying that. And then for these stocks, so if you are very good at the game, you could honestly run the no stock. This one's gonna add so much mobility, like making it so you really fly around the map, but it is a little bit hard to use at medium range. Close range, like shipping and stuff, you should be fine, but at like medium range, it is a little bit hard to use, which is why I'm going to be adding the Fortress Heavy. Yes, this does hurt the mobility a lot, but we all know this gun already has a lot of mobility, and so you're going to like really feel the pros, all the recoil control you get, and really not that much loss to your ADS speed. You guys can see now you can use it up to medium range very easily. And so overall, this is honestly one of my favorite aggressive builds in the game. It is so nasty. And then for the secondary, we actually are going to be running the Karambit. Karambit is a very underrated secondary. This thing is so broken. It actually got banned in the competitive league, and so Karambit is a very good secondary. I am running the infantry vest so I can tax a little bit longer and have that recharge faster. I always blow through ammo with this gun, and so I'm running the munitions, although I usually would run the trophy if I am on a very tiny map, so then I don't really have to worry about nades and stuns and things. And then since with this build, since I'm always in their face, running EOD, got the covert sneakers since they don't hear me running up behind them. Then we got the assault gloves so I can be a little bit more accurate when I am jump shotting. And then yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this build. For the last build that we are going to be going over, this is going to be the Striker 9. So the Striker 9 actually just got a mobility buff as well. I don't know why they buffed the mobility so much on a lot of these guns. Like I found that they were already really good, but now they're really good. And the Striker 9, I haven't used this gun that much, but it's basically like the Striker but with a faster fire rate. A little bit hard to use at long range, but it is like, you know, an SMG. So at close range, you should be able to win every gunfight. Very underrated gun. I absolutely love it. So we are actually not going to be running a muzzle on this build. If you want to run a muzzle, you could take off the optic or a magazine and then add the Shadow Strike suppressor or a muzzle that I was telling you guys before. We are going to be again adding the Striker Elite long barrel. This one's just going to increase that damage range, and so now it is going to be about 4 to 5 shots to kill up to 12 meters. And then we also get a lot of recoil control, allowing you to use it up to like medium and long range. Yes, we are losing a lot of our mobility and a little bit of our handling, but like I said, this gun already has a lot of that, and so you really won't notice that. And we are going to be mitigating some of those cons by adding the Chimera Ryan 03 vertical grip. This one's going to add a lot of recoil gun kick control, just overall making that recoil control a lot smoother. We get a lot of vertical as well, and we're losing a little bit of our horizontal, which won't be noticeable at all. We are also losing more of our handling, but that's what got buffed on this weapon, so you won't notice that. And then we are going to be mitigating some of the cons. Well, I guess not mitigating the cons, but we are going to be like boosting the mobility, so now you can run around the map a little bit quicker and you can strafe quicker, which always strafing your gunfights gives you that rotation, aim assist, and just you're a harder target to hit. No stock is also very good, but keep in mind there is going to be a lot of recoil on the weapon, so it's only for more of like these skilled players, which the no stock would mitigate a lot of the cons of the build. That is very fun, just hard to use at medium range. And then I don't really care for the iron sights for some reason on this build, so I am going to be running the MK3 reflector or the Nidar model 2023. And then we do got the 50 round mag, since you know you blow through ammo with this build. Again, if you do want to add a muzzle, or you want to add the rear grip that adds like stability, or you want to increase the damage range with the high grade rounds, maybe you want to add a laser, you can add the VLK, which increases mobility and it adds a lot of stability. I would take off the optic or the magazine. You could even take off the stock on there. The main just two attachments are going to be the vertical grip and the Striker long barrel, which I believe that is going to wrap it up for this video. I do have a couple other builds I want to give you guys, like a nasty MTZ build, but I'm going to say save that for a future video. So I hope you guys did enjoy, and deuces.